What if I told you that aging isn't something to fear, but something you should embrace? Sounds controversial, right? We've all heard society tell us to fight aging, to resist it, as if it's the enemy. But what if the real struggle isn't aging itself? It's our resistance to it. Welcome to Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, where today we're going to challenge the way you think about aging. If you've ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized yourself, if you felt the world moving faster while you seem to be left behind, you're not alone. As time passes, our bodies change, our friendships shift, and we often wonder, is this what growing old feels like? But here's the thing, Buddhism offers a profound truth. The Buddha taught, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We don't suffer because we age. We suffer because we cling to the past, to youth, to what was. But when we learn to accept impermanence, when we stop resisting change, we can unlock a deep sense of peace and freedom. And today, I'm going to share 8 Buddhist truths about aging that will transform the way you see this phase of life. These aren't just ideas, they're lessons you can apply every day. Yet most of us don't recognize them in our daily lives. Instead of seeing aging as a decline, we'll learn how to view it as a powerful transformation. Stay with me, because part number 5 is the one that will change everything. It holds the key to unlocking a completely new life at any age. So stick around. You're going to gain insights that will completely shift the way you live your later years. And if you find value in today's video, please like and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support will give us the motivation to continue creating more content that helps people live with peace, purpose, and mindfulness, especially as we age. 1. You're older and more beautiful than ever. There comes a moment in life when you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, and something inside you shifts. You see the reflection, but it's not the person you once knew. Your skin feels softer, thinner. The hair, once vibrant, is now graying. Your hands, once strong, are more delicate, their movements slower. That moment hits like a quiet punch to the stomach. You are no longer the person you once were. For many, this realization is painful, almost unbearable. Society teaches us that aging is something to fear, something to fight against. Ads tell us to erase wrinkles, dye our hair, and chase youth at all costs. We've been led to believe that aging is a loss. But what if, instead of fearing it, we saw it as a transformation? What if, instead of clinging to youth, we embraced the truth that beauty doesn't fade, it evolves? There's an old Zen story that captures this beautifully. An elderly woman visited a wise master, eyes filled with sadness. She said, "Master, when I look in the mirror, I don't recognize the person I see. My beauty has vanished. My hair is silver, my skin is lined, and I feel invisible. What happened to the woman I once was?" The master smiled and led her to a garden. He pointed to a cherry blossom tree in full bloom and asked, "Is this not beauty?" She nodded. Then he showed her an ancient pine tree, its bark twisted and weathered by time. "And this?" he asked. "It's different," she said, "but there's something dignified about it, something strong." The master smiled. "A child may only see beauty in the blossom, but over time we come to appreciate the strength of the pine. Just as you have lived through time, your beauty has transformed. And so has yours." I once met a woman named Eleanor Richardson. As a young woman, Eleanor was a professional dancer. Graceful, admired by all. People would stop her on the street to compliment her beauty. But now, in her 80s, she shared with me a quiet sadness. "People don't look at me the same way anymore. It's like I've disappeared." She spoke of how, in her youth, heads would turn when she entered a room, but now no one notices her. One day, her granddaughter Sophie came to visit. Sophie, at 15, was full of life, her youth shining through. As she brushed her long golden hair, she turned to Eleanor and said, "Grandma, I wish I had your hair." Eleanor laughed softly. "My hair? It's white as snow. Sophie smiled. Yes, but it looks like stardust, and your face, every line tells a story. I hope I look like you one day. Those words warmed Eleanor's heart. She had spent so much time mourning what was gone that she failed to appreciate what remained. Her beauty hadn't disappeared, it had deepened. Think of the elders you admire. Were they beautiful because they looked young, or because they carried themselves with grace, wisdom, and dignity? True beauty doesn't come from how we look. It comes from who we are. It's the confidence that comes from knowing yourself, the strength that comes from enduring life's storms, the gentleness that comes from understanding others. This is the beauty of aging. It's not something being taken from you, it's something being given. It's a privilege, a gift that many will never experience. Would you trade your wisdom and experiences for smooth skin again? So, next time you catch your reflection and feel a pang of sorrow for what's lost, pause, look deeper, see the life you've lived, the love you've given, the wisdom you carry. Wear your years like a crown. Because true beauty isn't behind you, it's within you, right now, in this very moment. 2. Your body changes, but you're not losing there. There comes a moment when you wake up and it hits you. Your body isn't what it once was. You used to run without a second thought, but now your knees ache and your hands tremble. The body that once carried you with ease now betrays you, slowing you down, leaving you frustrated, even angry. Maybe it's the stiffness in your back when you roll out of bed, or the stairs that now feel taller than ever. Maybe it's the simple act of tying your shoes that leaves you gasping for breath. And at night, when everything else is still, you lie awake, haunted by memories of the times when you felt strong, confident, and in control. It's a hard truth, and for many, it feels unfair. Why does the body that once served you so faithfully now become a burden? But here's what Buddhism teaches. The problem isn't aging itself, it's our attachment to youth. There's an old Buddhist story about a monk who struggled to carry water from the river each day. His hands, once steady and sure, now trembled with age, and the water spilled from the buckets before he could even make it back to the temple. One evening, exhausted and frustrated, he turned to his master. "Master," he sighed, "my body is failing me. I am no longer useful." The master didn't respond immediately. Instead, he handed the monk a cracked clay pot. "This pot once held water effortlessly," he said, "but now it leaks. Does that make it useless?" The monk ran his fingers over the cracks in the pot. "No," he replied softly, "it still holds some water." "And doesn't that still serve a purpose?" the master asked. And in that moment, the monk understood. His body too had changed, but it was not without value. It still had purpose. And so does yours. I once met Bill Peterson, a retired firefighter from Chicago. For over 30 years, Bill was a hero, strong, dependable, fearless. His body was his greatest asset. It carried him through countless rescues, running into burning buildings, lifting heavy loads without hesitation. He was invincible, but by his late 60s, time caught up with him. His knees gave out. Arthritis set in, making even simple tasks like opening a jar of pickles a struggle. "I felt useless," Bill confessed to me one afternoon, sitting on a park bench. "For so long, I was the one people depended on, the one who could do anything. And suddenly, I couldn't even carry a bag of groceries." He fought it for a while, pushing himself beyond his limits, desperate to hold on to the strength he once had. But it wasn't until his doctor sat him down and said, "Bill, your body isn't failing you. It's evolving, and you need to evolve with it," that he realized the truth. So Bill did just that. Instead of focusing on what he couldn't do, he embraced what he could. He started practicing Tai Chi, moving his body in slow, mindful ways. He began teaching fire safety to kids at local schools, passing on his hard-earned wisdom. And in doing so, Bill discovered something profound. "I may not be able to carry someone out of a fire anymore," he told me, "but I can still carry stories, lessons, kindness, and that matters just as much." Your body has carried you through a lifetime. It has withstood the tests of time, survived sickness, and adapted to the challenges you've faced. Now it's asking for your patience and understanding. Instead of resenting it for slowing down, why not thank it? Yes, you may not run as fast anymore, but you can still walk with purpose. You may not lift as much, but you carry wisdom, love, and experience. Your hands may tremble, but they can still offer kindness. The greatest suffering doesn't come from aging. It comes from resisting it. The Buddha taught that peace comes not from fighting change, but from flowing with it. Like a tree that doesn't weep when its leaves fall in autumn, we must learn to accept the changing seasons of life. So, next time you feel frustration toward your aging body, pause, breathe, and whisper, "Thank you." Because no matter how many cracks you carry, this body is still your home. And just like that cracked pot, it still holds water. 3. Happiness isn't behind you, it's here. As we grow older, there's a quiet sadness that creeps in. We start to look back, flipping through old photo albums, remembering when life was full of laughter, when we were strong, and when we mattered. We tell ourselves, "I was happiest when I was young," or "the best days are behind me." Gradually, we begin to believe it, that joy only existed in the past, and what remains is just a slow fade into the shadows of time. But Buddhism offers a different truth. Happiness is never in the past. It is always found in the present moment, right here, right now. There's a Zen story that speaks to this. A man spent years traveling the world, searching for happiness. He sought out wise teachers, read sacred texts, and chased every path that promised joy. Yet no matter how far he went, happiness always seemed to be just out of reach. Exhausted, he finally returned home, feeling defeated. One day, he sat down with an old monk and poured himself a cup of tea. The monk, smiling gently, said, "There it is." The man was confused. "Where is what?" he asked. "Happiness," the monk replied. "It's not in the years you spent searching this. It's not in the past you long for, nor in the future you chase. It's right here, in the warmth of the cup in your hands, in the quiet of the morning, in simply being present right now." The man finally understood. He had spent his whole life looking for happiness somewhere else, when it had always been right in front of him. I met Alice Porter, an 82-year-old retired librarian who knew this truth all too well. Alice had lived a rich life, raising children, traveling with her late husband, hosting dinner parties full of laughter. But now, life had slowed down. "It's not the same anymore," she told me, her eyes distant as she watched the rain from her porch. "I miss those days. I miss feeling needed. I miss having something to look forward to." For a long time, Alice believed that her happiest moments were behind her. But one day, everything changed. Her granddaughter Lily came to visit. "Grandma, do you want to bake cookies with me?" Alice hesitated. She hadn't baked in years. But as they stood together in the kitchen, rolling out dough and smelling the cinnamon fill the air, Alice felt a spark of something she hadn't in a long time. Joy. Not from the past, not from an old memory, but from this moment. Right here. Right now. Later that evening, as they sat together with warm cookies and tea, Alice realized something profound. "I've been so busy missing what was that I forgot to see what still is." Happiness doesn't live in the past. It's not found in clinging to what was or chasing what might have been. It's found in the present, in what still exists today. It's in the sound of birds greeting the morning. It's in the warmth of a cup of tea in your hands. It's in the laughter of a grandchild. It's in the kindness of a friend. True happiness is not about holding on to old memories. It's about embracing the life that's still unfolding in this very moment. So the next time you find yourself saying, "The best days are behind me," take a pause. Breathe. Look around, because the best moment of your life, it might just be the one you are living right now. 4. When people leave, find peace in letting go. As we grow older, something painful begins to happen. People drift away. Friends who once felt like family now seem like strangers. Some fade out of our lives without explanation. Once, your phone rang constantly. Friends dropped by unannounced. Family gatherings were full of laughter and love. But now the calls come less often. The visits are rare. And you find yourself asking, what did I do wrong? It's a quiet kind of loneliness, isn't it? One that seeps in slowly and leaves a hole in your heart. But here's what Buddhism teaches us. The Buddha often spoke of impermanence, the idea that everything in life is always changing. Nothing stays the same forever, not even our relationships. People come into our lives when we need them, and they leave when their role in our story is done. Just like the changing seasons, people come and go. Some friendships last a lifetime, others last only a season. And that's not something to mourn. It's simply life. There's an old Buddhist parable about a young monk who once asked his teacher, "Master, why do people leave us when we love them?" The teacher led him to a riverbank and pointed to the flowing water. "See how the river moves?" the master asked. "Each drop of water flows past us, never staying in one place. Some drops travel together, moving side by side for miles. Others are carried away quickly by the current, and that's okay." The young monk listened closely. "People are like that," the master continued. "Some walk beside us for a short time, others for years. But all must keep moving. It is not their departure that should sadden us, but our refusal to accept that their presence was never meant to be permanent." The monk sat in silence, watching the river, finally understanding. Love does not mean ownership. It means gratitude for what was and peace with what is. I once met Margaret Ellis, a retired nurse in her 80s. She had lived a full life, raising children, caring for patients, building lasting friendships. But over the years she saw people leave. Some moved away, some passed on. Others simply faded from her life. "Each one left," she said quietly, "and for years, it hurt. I kept asking myself, was I not enough?" One day, while flipping through an old photo album, something shifted inside her. I looked at all those faces, friends, neighbors, co-workers, people I laughed with, cried with, and I thought, how lucky I was to have had them in my life at all. Instead of focusing on who was gone, she began to appreciate those who had been there. Even if they're not in my life now, they were part of my journey, and for that, I'm grateful. The pain of their absence didn't disappear, but it became lighter. She no longer mourned them. She cherished their memory. We cannot hold on to everyone forever, but we can cherish those who remain. Maybe it's an old friend who still calls you sometimes. Maybe it's the neighbor who waves at you every morning. Or maybe it's a grandchild who listens to your stories with rapt attention. Focus on those who are here, because life continues to offer new connections if we stay open to them. So if there's someone who has drifted away, let them go with love. Wish them well. Their role in your story may have ended, but their impact remains. Instead of holding on too tightly, trust the flow of life. Just like the river, people come and go, but the love, the lessons, and the memories, they will always stay with you. 5. Let go of what if and find peace. We all have a vision of how life should be. I should have been healthier. I should have saved more money. I should have achieved more by now. But when life doesn't go according to plan, it stirs up a storm of disappointment, frustration, and bitterness. We feel as though we've failed, like something essential has slipped through our grasp. But here's the truth. Life doesn't follow our expectations. It moves in its own rhythm, unpredictable and wild, like the wind that blows through the trees, sometimes soft, sometimes fierce. Yet the problem isn't life itself. It's our rigid expectations of how life should unfold. Buddhism teaches us, accept what is, rather than clinging to what should be. The less we fight against life, the more peace we will find. Take the story of an old farmer. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors came rushing to comfort him. "What terrible luck," they exclaimed. But the farmer simply shrugged and said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." A week later, his horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. His neighbors rejoiced. "What wonderful fortune," they said. But the farmer, unshaken, replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no." A few days later, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and fell, breaking his leg. "How awful," the neighbors cried. But again, the farmer replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no." Then the army came, recruiting young men for war. Because of his son's injury, he was spared from the draft. "How lucky you are," the neighbors exclaimed. The farmer simply answered, "Maybe yes, maybe no." This story teaches us not to judge events too quickly. What seems like misfortune today may turn out to be a blessing tomorrow. When we hold tight to our expectations, we struggle against reality. But when we let go, we find freedom. I once met a man named Richard Morgan, a retired engineer in his 70s. Richard had always imagined a peaceful retirement, days filled with travel, hobbies, and quiet evenings in the home he had worked so hard for. But life had other plans. His wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving a void he couldn't fill. Shortly after, a financial downturn wiped out his savings, and the house he had dreamed of growing old in had to be sold. For a long time, Richard was angry. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," he said, his voice thick with frustration. "I did everything right. I worked hard, I saved, I planned, and now here I am, starting over at 73. But one day, while sitting alone in a park, he struck up a conversation with a woman on a nearby bench. She was volunteering at a local community center and invited him to come visit. With nothing to lose, Richard went. That visit became a weekly routine. He started tutoring kids in math, and over time, he formed friendships with other retirees. Slowly, his life began to fill with new purpose. "I stopped focusing on what I lost," he said, a soft smile touching his lips, "and started appreciating what I still had. I thought my best years were behind me, but now I see that the best part of life is whatever is still unfolding." Richard had let go of his expectations, and in doing so, he found peace. We all have ideas of how life should be. We build dreams, set goals, and create plans. But what if we let go of those expectations? What if, instead of resisting change, we embraced it? The Buddha said, "When we cling, we suffer. When we let go, we are free." So take a deep breath. Let go of what you thought life should be, and embrace what is. Because sometimes the life we didn't expect becomes the life we were meant to live. 6. The truth about life and why it frees you. We spend our entire lives trying to build something lasting, something that will outlive us. A career, a home, a name people will remember. You've worked tirelessly, sacrificing your time and energy, hoping to leave behind a legacy that will endure for generations. Maybe you've spent decades building a career, providing for your family, and saving every penny, imagining that one day your children and grandchildren would look back and tell stories of your hard work and love. But over the years, you begin to notice something unsettling. The world doesn't stop for you. The company you devoted your life to has new faces filling the halls. The home you carefully built is being remodeled to fit the tastes of the next generation. And your children, the ones you raised with so much sacrifice, are now caught up in their own busy lives. Then one day, you overhear a younger relative ask, "Who was Grandpa's father again?" And in that moment, the weight of time hits you like a cold wave. It's not just the passing years, it's the realization that time moves on, no matter how hard we try to hold on. The Buddha often spoke of impermanence, the truth that nothing in life stays the same. People change, places change, we change. But what if, instead of fearing this truth, we embraced it? What if we focused not on the name we leave behind, but on the ripples we create while we're here? There's a Zen story that speaks to this truth. A young disciple once asked his master, "Master, does it not sadden you that one day people will forget your name?" The old monk smiled softly and pointed to the river flowing past their temple. "Tell me," he asked, "where is the water that was here yesterday?" The disciple paused, knowing the water had long moved on, carried by the current. "It has flowed on," the monk said, "yet the river remains." The lesson was simple, yet profound. It's not our name or our title that matters. It's the current of our actions, the impact we have on others while we're here. I once met a man named James Harper. James had been a high school history teacher in Ohio for nearly 40 years, and over that time, thousands of students had walked through his classroom. Some had gone on to become doctors, lawyers, teachers. Yet James remained in his quiet life, sitting on his porch at 83 with his dog Rusty by his side. He often wondered, do they remember me? Then, one afternoon as he stood in the grocery store, a man in his mid-40s walked past him, paused, then turned back around. "Mr. Harper?" the man said, his face lighting up in recognition. James squinted, trying to place him. "You probably don't remember me," the man continued, "but you taught me history back in '92. My name's Tom Barker." James searched his memory, and then it clicked. Tom smiled warmly. "You were the reason I became a teacher. The way you brought history to life, you made me want to teach the way you did. I tell my students about you all the time." James felt a lump form in his throat as he shook Tom's hand, a soft smile on his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. Later that evening, as James sat on his porch, watching the sunset, he turned to me and said, "That moment reminded me, even if they forget my name, they will never forget how I made them feel." Our names, our titles, they may fade with time, but the love we share, the wisdom we offer, the kindness we show, that remains long after we're gone. Think about it. Do you remember every teacher's name who shaped your life? Probably not, but you remember how they made you feel. The encouragement, the warmth, the way they believed in you. So don't worry about whether your name will be remembered. Instead, ask yourself, are you present with the people around you? Are you showing kindness, even in the smallest ways? Are you sharing your wisdom without expecting anything in return? In the end, legacy is not about statues or monuments. It's about the ripples you leave in the hearts of others. Let go of the fear of being forgotten. Focus on being here, now. Like the river, you can't hold on to the water of yesterday, but the river always flows. 7, they're gone, but never truly lost. As the years pass, one truth becomes inescapable. You will lose the people you love. Parents, siblings, friends, even children. One by one, they leave this world, and nothing can prepare you for that heart-wrenching emptiness. The vacant chair at the dinner table, the silence where their laughter used to be, the automatic instinct to reach for the phone, only to remember. They aren't there to answer. Grief is not something you get over. It's something you learn to live with. It changes you. But Buddhism offers a profound truth. Love does not die. The people you have lost live on in you, in their lessons, their stories, their love. Every time you speak their name, share their wisdom, or carry forward their kindness, they are still with you. There is an ancient Buddhist story about a woman named Kisa Gotami. She had a young son who passed away, and her grief was so overwhelming that she refused to believe he was truly gone. Desperate, she carried his lifeless body from house to house, begging for a cure. Finally, she reached the Buddha, and he told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a home that has never known death." With renewed hope, she went from door to door, asking if anyone had been untouched by loss. But every door she knocked on revealed a family who had lost someone. Every home had experienced pain. By the time her search ended, Kisa Gotami realized something profound. She was not alone in her suffering. Grief is a thread woven into the very fabric of life. No one escapes it. I met a man named Walter Green. Walter was a quiet, kind-hearted man in his late 70s who had been married to his wife Linda for 53 years. One autumn morning, Linda was gone. A sudden stroke, no warning, no chance for a final goodbye. For months, Walter lived in the silence of their home. "I still set the table for two," he admitted. I would wake up in the middle of the night and reach for her hand, only to remember it wasn't there. Grief wrapped itself around his heart like an unrelenting fog. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Walter was sitting in the garden, lost in thought, when a small cardinal landed on the fence. Linda had always loved cardinals. She used to say they were little messengers from heaven, Walter said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. In that moment, he didn't feel alone. I don't know if it was really her, he said, but I know this: she never truly left. Walter began noticing signs of Linda everywhere. The way her favorite song always seemed to play on the radio, the scent of her perfume lingering in an old sweater, the way their grandson smiled with the same warmth she had. She's still here, he said. Not in the way I want, but in the way I need. Think about the people you've lost. Maybe it was a parent whose laughter still echoes in your memory. Maybe it was a friend whose advice continues to guide you. Maybe it was a partner whose love still shapes how you love others. They may be gone, but they're not truly absent. One of the greatest misconceptions about grief is that we must move on. But Buddhism teaches us that we do not need to move on, we must move forward. Carry the love, carry the lessons, carry the essence of those who are no longer with us. Have you ever noticed how a familiar smell, song, or phrase brings someone back to life, if only for a moment? That is their presence, lingering in you. It's a reminder that love is not bound by the physical world. Grief is painful, yes, but it is also a testament to the depth of our love. The greater the love, the deeper the loss. Yet instead of wishing the pain away, we can transform it into gratitude. Instead of focusing on what we've lost, we can cherish what we were given. As we age, we witness more loss. But we also have the privilege of loving deeply, forming connections that truly mattered. And in the end, we carry forward the spirit of those who have touched our lives. So when the weight of loss presses down on your heart, remember this: love never dies. It flows through you, in your actions, in the kindness you offer to the world. As long as you keep loving, those who have passed remain a part of you. And in that, they are never truly gone. 8. Think it's too late? You still have time. As we grow older, a quiet fear begins to creep in. A haunting thought that maybe our best years are behind us. We hear it in the sighs of those who feel forgotten by time. I wish I had started earlier. I'm too old to learn something new. What's the point of making new friends now? But Buddhism teaches us a different truth. Every moment is a new beginning. No matter how many birthdays you've celebrated, as long as you are still here, you still have time. Not time to dwell on the past or regret what could have been, but time to embrace what is still possible. There's an old Buddhist story about a bamboo cutter, a man who had spent his life in the forest. Over the years, his hands had become stiff, his back had started to ache, and the sharp blade he once wielded with ease now felt heavy in his grip. One day, feeling defeated and overwhelmed by age, he sat under a tree, thinking, "My best years are gone." A wise monk passed by and noticed the man's sorrow. "Why do you despair?" the monk asked. "I'm too old," the bamboo cutter replied. "What is there left for me to do? I can't even cut bamboo like I used to." The monk smiled gently and pointed to the ground. "See that sprout?" he said. The bamboo cutter looked down to see a tiny green shoot pushing its way through the earth. The monk continued, "That sprout does not ask if it's too late to grow, it simply reaches for the sun." The bamboo cutter paused. He realized that life doesn't stop growing, and neither should he. From that moment, instead of mourning what he could no longer do, he focused on what he still could. He began teaching younger cutters, sharing his wisdom. He even learned to carve bamboo into intricate sculptures, finding a new purpose he never imagined. I once met a woman named Grace Thompson. At 75, she felt like she had already lived her life. Her husband had passed away, and her children had moved far away, leaving her feeling lost in the quiet of an empty home. For months, she drifted aimlessly, spending her days in front of the television, watching time slip by. Then one evening, while cleaning out a drawer, she found an old notebook filled with poetry she had written years ago. It had been so long since she had written, she had almost forgotten how much she loved it. The next day, she picked up a pen and tried again. At first, the words didn't come easily, and self-doubt crept in. "I'm too old to start now," she thought. But then, she remembered something her mother used to say. "If you wake up in the morning, it means life still has something for you to do." So Grace kept writing. She joined a local writing group, made new friends, and even published her first collection of poems at 78. "I thought my time was over," she said with a radiant smile. "But I realized I still had a whole story left to tell." Some people think that aging is the end of opportunity. But the truth is, you are never too old to learn something new, form new friendships, find new joys in life. The past is behind you, but the future, it's still yours to shape. So don't waste time and regret over what you didn't do. Instead, ask yourself, what can I still do? Because as long as your heart still beats, your story is not over yet. Grow like the sprout. Write the words you've been holding inside. Say the things you need to say. Laugh, learn, love. Because the best is not behind you, it's still ahead. Aging is not something being taken away from you, it is something being given. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every year that passes, it is all proof of a life lived, lessons learned, and love shared. But too often, society tells us to fear aging, to fight against it, to chase youth as if growing older is something to be ashamed of. Buddhism teaches otherwise. Aging is not the enemy, fear is. When we resist change, we suffer. When we cling to the past, we miss the beauty of the present. But the moment we surrender to life's natural flow, we unlock peace, wisdom, and a deeper appreciation for what remains. Aging is not a decline, it is a transformation. It is not the closing of a book, but the turning of a page. So, my dear friend, what will you do with these truths? Will you fight against time? Or will you embrace it with an open heart? Because this stage of life, it is not an end. It is a new beginning. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you found value in this, consider subscribing for more wisdom on living with peace, purpose, and mindfulness. Because the next chapter, it's yours to write.